Good afternoon, everyone. On this June 10th of 2021, I'm Mayor Diana Broderson, and welcome to our city. You know what? I can't even believe this month is almost half over. It's crazy. It's going so fast this year. Last year seemed to take 10 years to get through, and now here we are just jumping over ourselves getting through to the end of the year. But I want to thank all of you for coming today. We do have a great guest with us. Later, we'll introduce him, John Koch, the director of our Water Resource and Recovery Center here in Muscatine. But before that, just a couple of quick announcements. First of all, as you know, the vaccine is out there and everybody's able to access it. I'm on a committee that's working on just making sure that we get access information out there. So we put together this flyer on just how to access the vaccine here in Muscatine. There's all kinds of ways. Call any local pharmacy, call senior resources, call me. I'll help you navigate where to go. Public health, your regular doctor. All of the information is out there, and everyone, as I've seen, is all happy to help. So thanks to everybody who's been trying to help everybody navigate this system and try to get our world back to as normal as possible. Next, I just wanted to share with you, signups already started for the Library Summer Reading Program. It's an amazing program. It doesn't just happen here in Muscatine, but it's all over the United States. And our library is the best, of course. We don't have to say much about that. But they work really hard to do fun and innovative and exciting things for the whole family. And this year, they gave us a nice update last Thursday at our council meeting about just what this summer reading program is going to look like. There's going to be several quests, and you can do it on your own leisure, but you need to get signed up. And so the way to do that is go on their website, stop into the library, call them if you have any questions, but get signed up, and let's try to avoid that summer slide by staying involved in a fun way. They're so good about coming up with fun ways, and I know they would join me in thanking their sponsors, Friends of the Musser Public Library and CBI Bank and Trust, because I know they wouldn't be able to put on all of these services for the community if they didn't have those sponsors backing them up. So big shout out and thanks to them. Lastly, I just wanted to share that there's a self-defense workshop starting here at the Y tonight. And the Muscatine Police Department is putting this on. There's 3 different ones. So there's one with mothers and their daughters. There's some with younger girls. There is some with girls 14 and plus. Then there's some for just adult women by themselves. In this day and age, and probably always, it's a good idea for us to have that safety information and know how to protect ourselves. So thanks to the Muscatine Police Department for doing this. It's free, and there's, like I said, these different ones, but you do need to sign up. So they're trying to make sure that they have adequate space available so everybody can spread out a little bit. So call the Y today. The first one is tonight, and it's for girls 10 to 13 with their mothers, 6:30 to 8:30. So call the Y if you want to get involved in this. Great opportunity. And like I said, big thanks to everybody for joining to put that together. Well, I'd like to get right to our guest now. John Koch is the director of the Muscatine Water Resource and Recovery Center, and they are doing amazing things on our behalf. You can't imagine how forward thinking they are, and all of the services that they have done far better than any community anywhere near our size. We are really out there on the cutting edge, and we owe it all to this man, John Koch. Welcome, John. Thanks.
Hi, Mayor. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. I can't praise you guys enough for all that you do. And I know even besides the Water Resource and Recovery Facility and the new things you've done, like Mork down there, you had a pretty active role in the Muscatine Pollinator Project also.
I did. Yes, that was Dave Cooney and Ron Knopick from U.S. Fish and Wildlife actually were the official people who signed off on that. but it was a pretty neat experience getting together with my group of guys and gals. We had some gals with us too, forming the Muscatine Pollinator Project. And we were pretty proud of ourselves, and we had a couple of lift stations with some flowers around it. We thought we really had done some great things, and then all of a sudden this land behind the dog park and everything else that was just going fallow, as nothing was there. It was just being mowed for weeds. But the Public Works was actually installing a trail around it. And I'm like, well, that's nice to put a trail around the transfer station. There's nothing really back there. So I said, do you mind if I propose this as a pollinator park? The stormwater department would run it, and my pollinator group would help steer it and take care of it. And nobody minded. Nobody really cared about that ground back there. It's kind of landlocked, or anyone, and nobody's going to use it for anything. So I think it went to great use. The whole area, actually, once we start adding up all the acres, is about 55 acres, believe it or not, that we intend to, shall we say, revitalize. So starting at the just south of the soccer fields, those new soccer fields, and you go all the way around the transfer station, and actually inside the transfer station, where we have some opportunities to reclaim some just wide open grassy areas that people down there don't really care if they mow. Nobody uses them for anything, so we might as well convert those to prairies as well, and I think we can do that soon. And then the entire length of the slough from the south of the soccer complex all the way to the driveway of the transfer station, we have plans to revitalize that entire area, installing possibly some boardwalks to get people into the wetlands that are actually created down there naturally, and some paths back in through there. So now we have a wooded prairie experience next to a stream as well, which I think will really enhance that area. But so all total, it's gonna be about 55 acres. It's an ongoing project, but it's pretty neat.
It really is. And it's been a great, not even the work that you're doing there, or that was done there, even, at drawing in the different pollinators. And we could go on for days about how important pollinators are to our world. But even so, even if you take that part out, it has become quite an educational tool.
Yeah, there are educational signs there. So if you happen to, and I think I have a sign that I sent Chad here where that points you into the park in case you don't know where it is. If you're going along the trail and you come out of Kentstein, you cross Hauser Street, all of a sudden you're going to see this sign that says Hauser Street Pollinator Park, a little arrow pointing in even. And then you take that bridge, and we're going to have nice brand new railing on that bridge in the coming months, we hope. So that takes you all the way around. It's a 1 mile spur, we call it, off of the paved bike trail. So it's a whole 1 mile walk, and it will bring you right back out on the driveway to the transfer station, and this is a short jump back onto the bike trail. So but there's educational signs back there that kind of teach a little bit about it. So there's 2 wetlands back there, and I'll talk about that a little bit later when I go into what we're doing at the treatment plant of why this park is important. It's not just a pretty face; it's actually going to be functional as well. So yeah, it's a neat tool we have, and hopefully we have a driveway now. We can get buses back there, so we're planning on, when it's time again to have tours, to hopefully bring kids down there. And bust them in so they can experience that as well.
That's great. And the awareness, the whole community, just even talking about the pollinator park, people are like, oh yeah, I should plant some of that stuff in my garden out back. And I think the whole community has learned and became more aware of the need just by making this, it's been a win-win.
Yeah, well, Pollinator Week starts June 21st. It's a whole week celebrating pollinators and things like that. It's a little unfortunate. It's an unfortunate time. The pollinators are doing great in the middle of June, but we kind of had to have them all planted and bought and everything in May, pretty much. So the Muscatine Pollinator Project has been out at the farmers market, oh gosh, 4 or 5 weeks, I think, selling flats. We have a mix of, I think, just about 12 different species, 10 or 12 different species we were selling, so that you could actually have a starter garden. So little corner of your garden, you could plant a whole bunch of these native pollinators and attract all the bees and the butterflies and everything else that you could have had there. Unfortunately, we're done with that sale for the year. So remember us for next year. Get down there and get your flats for your native pollinators, and we change it up every year a little bit. So there's always something new. What I try to do, and there's a group called the Homegrown National Parks. And if you look that up on Facebook or on the web, you'll find that started by a guy named Doug Ptolemy. And what he's trying to do is to get people to convert more of their grass yards into native pollinator gardens, because grass doesn't really do anything for anybody. There's nothing there that supports any life, except things like Japanese beetles. They love grass. They'll overwinter there. So we've kind of been trained to like grass and to mow it and to keep it nice and trim and to have it everywhere out in front of our yards, but it doesn't absorb any water. So when the storms hit and the water runs down your yard, it just runs off your yard and into the storm drain. So we end up with a lot more flooding and a lot more water coming off of these areas that wouldn't normally happen. Back in the day, about 80% of the water stayed on the land and only 20% went into the rivers and streams. Well, that is completely flip-flopped now. Only about 20% or so of the water actually absorbs into the ground, and 80% goes into the rivers and streams. This is why we have soil erosion, why we have flooding, why we have pollution, why we have a lot of the problems that we have. And one of the solutions is to put some of these native species in a plot where you normally had grass. And then you can direct your storm drains to those, which is what I do in my yard. I have several plots now that used to be grass, and now they're native pollinators. And those roots are so deep, 15 feet sometimes, that will actually sequester carbon, number one, but it acts like a sponge, and all that water just gets soaked into the ground. So it is important. They're pretty as well. They're functional. They bring in the butterflies and the bees and things like that. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
And
when we get more of those and less, and you don't have to mow, and so it cuts down your carbon footprint because you're not mowing with your mower. It cuts down your time that you have to do all kinds of things. So yeah, it's a nice thing to have done.
It really is. It really is. I appreciate all you've done on that. But your department, we're highlighting your department this week, and there's a lot you guys are working on. I don't know how you could ever share everything, but what's at the top of your list? I know tonight you're going to talk about MORC.
Right.
You want to explain MORC a little bit for us?
Sure. Well, as you introduced me as the director of the Water and Resource Recovery Facility, that sometimes kind of, what does that mean? What is that? Well, we're the wastewater plant. People know us, know what that is. You flush your toilet, you put water down your sink, down your shower, industries, everything else like that. All the sewers connect to us, and then we clean that water. So we take all the nasty stuff that's gotten into the water. We biologically clean it. We don't have any filters or anything down here. Through several different processes, we biologically take all the stuff out of it, and what goes back into the environment is clean. And we put it back into the Mississippi River at the moment, and the water that we put into the Mississippi River is cleaner than the Mississippi River. So we're not polluting it. We're actually cleaning the river because the water that goes back in has less stuff in it than the river did anyway. So that's kind of our function down here. For the most part, that's what we've always been, and that's all we've ever been. But a few years ago, we changed our name from the Water Pollution Control Plant. We used to be the wastewater plant. We used to be the sewer plant. Used to be all these things. Now we're the Water and Resource Recovery Facility because we are recovering water and we're recovering other resources that are going to be beneficial to the community. Hopefully, we can recover energy. One of the basic functions of the wastewater plant we have here are anaerobic digesters that actually make methane gas. And methane gas is when it's cleaned up is exactly like the natural gas that runs into your house and heats your water and heats your homes and things like that. So we're actually creating it, and right now we're just burning it off. But we can use that gas to create renewable energy, which is what we're hoping to do in the future. But Muscatine being the size that it is, we're not really big enough to have really big gas projects like this. So what we did is we said, well, what makes the gas in the digesters? How do we make more of this stuff? And it turns out if you feed digesters waste food, you can actually create more gas. Well, where do you find waste food? Well, believe it or not, almost 30% or more of the food produced in this world is not eaten, 30 to 40%. So that was going to landfills, and what it does in landfills sits there and decomposes and creates methane gas. But the landfills aren't very good at capturing that. Ours doesn't capture any of it, but even the ones that do capture it only capture, a percentage of the methane that comes off of there. So there's a big push going on right now to keep this food waste out of the landfills. I mean, the first thing you want to do with it is feed people, obviously. That's the best function of trying to keep that out. But if it's spoiled, or if it's no good, or if something's happened, it's dangerous, or if it's something expired that you can't feed, then it comes to us, and we can actually transfer that food into our digesters to make more gas, to make renewable energy and a renewable fertilizer as well. So it's a better purpose for this food than it is just going into the landfill. And what I will be talking about tonight with council, but I'll tell you now, is that we officially have our new sign up at the transfer station. It's in the building next door. If you know, it used to be the old recycling center, but it is actually now the Muscatine Organics Recycling Center, MORC. And the sign is up there. And if you see down below there is the orange bin where anybody can drop off food waste from their homes or their businesses. So if you want to start scraping your plates into a little bin, and I bought mine on Amazon, and I bought a whole box of rolls of compostable bags. They're small little bags that fit inside of this bin. Sits on my counter, and they're specially designed to keep air flowing through them, so they don't smell like you have rotting food sitting on your counter. If you have any questions about that, I'm going to bring one tonight to show everybody what exactly they are and how they function. And you have to clean it out every once in a while. You can't just leave it. It's like you're trashing your house. First few days you throw food in it, it doesn't stink, but you leave it there for a week, it starts to stink, right? So this little bin that sits on the counter actually has air running through, movement, so that it doesn't decompose too rapidly, so it doesn't stink up your kitchen and attract flies and whatnot. But then you take that bag and you can drive it down to the transfer station and put it inside that orange bin, and we will take that and we will put it in to make renewable energy and fertilizer out of it. So it's pretty cool little setup there, and it's completely free for residents as long as you're just throwing in your little bit of thing. And I've had a lot of people that went through their cupboards and they found things that were 10 years old. Like we all have things in our cupboards that we forgot were there or we didn't know was there. We're like, oh gosh, how old is this thing? And you don't even want to open it sometimes. A dented can that you think, might be okay to eat, but but you don't really want to donate it to have somebody get sick. You don't even have to open that metal can. You can take that, you can take the box or whatever you have, you can take anything that's in your fridge. If it looks questionable or it's growing green things off the top of it, you just throw the whole thing, package and all, right inside of that bin, and our machine will actually do the depackaging for you.
That's amazing that it can do that depackaging.
Yep. Yeah. And so it's the facility is open anytime the transfer station is open. I don't run the transfer station, so I'm not sure of hours. I think they're open till 3:15 every day. And then they're open on Saturdays, probably 8 to 11 or something along those lines. I should actually know that and look that up, but I don't know what time.
So anybody right now I know you're doing stuff with businesses, but the residents, they can just take their food waste and just throw it in that orange bin whenever the transfer station's open.
Yeah, and you know, people like to compost, you know, their food waste. And so, oh, I have a compost bin out back. Well, that's great. You know, that's awesome. Compost is wonderful. Maybe you end up with something that you don't put in your compost, like when you browned meat, right? And you're making tacos or whatever, and you drain that grease off into something to let it cool, right? You don't put it down your drain, I hope, because that will plug your sewer lines and ours. But you know, you've put it into an old soup can that you had there, right?
Sure.
You let it cool. Now what do you do with it? Well, a lot of people throw it away, right? Because you don't put it in your composter either, even if you have a composter, because that's not the kind of stuff you want in there. Right. Now you can bring that to the morgue, and we'll actually make energy out of it. So the grease is very valuable to us as a commodity. So you can bring it down and do that. Now, for instance, come up on Thanksgiving, and you have fried your turkey, right? And these deep fryers that you have. And now you have this grease, this liquid oil, like 5 gallons of the stuff. What do you do with it? Well, you pour it back into that grease container that you bought it in, because now it's full of chicken chunks and stuff. You don't want to leave it until next year. You put it back, screw the cap on nice and tight, and bring it down to us. And just inside the door, around the corner there from where that bin is a black and yellow containment area, and you put that jug right on top of there, and we'll take it down to the plant and clean that grease up for you, clean that oil, and process that and make renewable energy out of it. So,
and then what are you doing with the energy after you're making it right now?
Well, right now all we do is we heat boilers with it. So we run it through to our boilers. They heat up the material, but most of it right now is being flared, unfortunately. So we hope to make energy out of that. And the latest and greatest, and the things that have really been coming around for about the last 5 years or so or something, with electricity, you know, we were really kind of sold on this natural gas because natural gas vehicles were kind of a big thing. They still are a big thing, especially in California and places, and in some places around here as well. But they have lots of places where you can actually refuel with natural gas, and there's one in Quad Cities, but very few around here. Anyway, that of course is not what everybody's talking about in vehicles now. Everybody's talking about electric vehicles, right? I mean, everybody's car is going to be electric. That's not me saying, that's GM. That's the largest car manufacturer in Toyota, I guess, saying that by 2030 or 2040, they're not even going to make gas vehicles anymore. They're going to be all electric vehicles. So the best thing that we can do with it now, I think, is make electricity, because we can actually become what's called a microgrid, where we would actually have battery storage here on site that we would take power in, and that power then gets kind of smoothed out, which we have a lot of power issues that affects our machinery and equipment down here anyway. So that's going to be a good thing for us. And then we can sell the electricity back into the grid. Hopefully, this has not worked out yet. We have talked to Power and Water about it, but that's what we are going to propose. And then we get something called a renewable energy credit for that as well. So we get the sale of the energy and a renewable energy credit, so I can sell it for more than I can buy it. And so we have an extra revenue source as well for the city as well. So
is that kind of like people that have, like my brother has solar panels on the whole top of his house. So they use it to power their house, and then anything left over, they can sell it back to the grid. Is it like that?
It's pretty much like that, yes.
Okay.
Something just like that. So
exciting.
Yeah, that's kind of the new thing. That's what everybody's talking about doing, is that it makes us more resilient, so that we have lots of energy sources coming from different places, so that when we have things that happen like in Texas with the energy thing, you know, they're all that natural gas, they weren't prepared, and all of a sudden, boom, it's just all gone.
Yeah.
If you have different sources and availability, then we can actually, because you know, the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, but we make biogas 24/7, 365 days a year. I mean, that's just by that process happening. Biogas is a continuous operation, so it's more consistent to some of those other renewables as well. So,
and this I don't think we can stress enough that everybody's not doing this. This
no,
is really something special.
Yeah, I don't know of anybody. I mean, there's a lot of treatment plants that make electricity out of their biogas, certainly. But nobody's doing it yet because that renewable energy credit isn't there. So it was in the renewable fuel standards that came out in 2007. So it started with the Bush administration. The Obama administration really ramped it up, and then but nobody took care of that electricity part. They said, well, if you make electricity and it goes to a vehicle fuel, you should get a credit. You should get something called an ERIN. Well, the EPA never issued them. They didn't know what to do with them because there weren't a lot of electric vehicles out there. So they couldn't guarantee that this electricity you made was going into cars or vehicles of any kind. Now we're sitting here at 2021 where we have this boom of electric vehicles and the promise of so many more electric vehicles out there, being out there soon. Now the EPA is saying, okay, now we're going to tackle this. Now we're going to start committing this. So no, nobody is doing it yet because it's not there yet. But I imagine a lot of facilities will probably start doing that once that availability is there. So yeah,
kudos to you to keeping Muscatine out ahead of the pack there, because they're all going to be running for it.
Yeah, nobody right now has a depackaging machine, a municipal one in the Midwest that I know of. Wow. Closest one I found was in Pennsylvania. You go on the coasts and they have mandates. If you generate more than a ton of organic waste a week or a day or something like that, it's actually illegal to throw it in the landfills because they have lots of landfill issues out there. We don't seem to have those same kind of problems. We got lots of land. You live in New York, you got to transport this stuff and everything. Out in Boston, they're like, no, if it's organic, you had to find another way to get rid of it. So they've been making a lot of these facilities like the Mork out there. Now, just recently, we know that Minnesota has kind of started some kind of things like that, and there's some talk about it in different areas. So these things always bleed into the middle of the country. I mean, it always happens that this kind of becomes the norm. So hopefully we're getting out on top of this ahead of time. We'll be the resource center for that, and before somebody else builds one, hopefully. But we can't guarantee that they won't. We just have to kind of try to be on top of that as much as we possibly can. So.
What other kind of things do you do down there?
Oh gosh, well, the next great thing that we have to do is nutrient reduction. That means nitrogen and phosphorus. That our plant does generate nitrogen and phosphorus, and that is what happens to cause the Gulf hypoxic zone, which means at the basin of the Mississippi, at the bottom of the Mississippi River, Mississippi discharges into the ocean with all these nitrogen and phosphorus levels that creates an algae that then the bacteria eat the algae and they die and fall to the bottom of the ocean and it goes anaerobic. And there's absolutely no oxygen in some of these areas for fish. So the fish die. So the fishermen down there have to go, 20, 30, 50, 100 miles out into the ocean to find fishable waters now because of all the runoff from the Mississippi River killing basically that. It's an area the size of New Jersey that it kills on a regular basis, which is so it's not just along the coast or anything. It's huge. It's a very large area that they do kill. So we are part of the problem. About 5% of the nitrogen and maybe 15% of the phosphorus. The rest of it is from ag land and from farming operations. So what we can do now that the Iowa nutrient reduction strategy has just opened up recently, and we have 3 communities doing this. We'll be the 4th, I think, where we can actually go to the farmers and say, we'll install things for you on your farm that captures the nitrogen and phosphorus that you're discharging so that it doesn't go into the streams and rivers. And that way we actually will be taking care of more nitrogen and phosphorus than we would just by doing things here at the treatment plant, which will cost millions of dollars to install and then take care of over the lifetime of this equipment and everything else like that. So for just, several thousands of dollars, tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars compared to millions of dollars, we can actually capture more nitrogen and phosphorus than we would just by doing anything with our effluent. Plus the things that we're talking about putting out, prairie strips is the number one big one for me, that we are looking to put out. And what prairie strips do is they actually can contain up to 95% of the soil erosion. So the farmer that had any issues with soil erosion, now that has gone away. 90% of the phosphorus that was discharged that can be captured on that, and about 85% of the nitrogen can be collected inside of these prairie strips. And they're little like 15-foot wide strips, either at the surrounding their fields or kind of going through their fields. And obviously prairie strips attracts butterflies and bees and all these other kinds of things. So you get the biodiversity, you get the wildlife returning to these farm grounds where, you know, we've done a good thing by feeding the world with these farms. But everything out there used to be prairie. And now there's about 0.1% prairie left in Iowa, when almost 85% of the ground in Iowa used to be prairie. So getting some of this back into the fields and where they normally were anyway is going to be a really exciting thing. This is booming all over the place. It's in 14 states now. There's just tons and tons of farmers doing this. They love the idea of bringing this native habitat back into their fields. No-till is another thing that they've been doing, which really helps keep the thing. And so we can get the farmers in our area to do that, and we'll help pay for it, along with like the NRCS and things like that. And we're doing more good than just installing things down here at the treatment plant that costs money. A lot of it's we might have to dose chemicals, might have to do all this kind of stuff. Nobody wants to do that. No. Let's do something that's going to make a better impact on our environment on the whole, than just doing something little here at the treatment plant.
Well, I think it's amazing, you know, these things that are going on. It really is a serious problem with the nutrients, with the nitrogen and the phosphorus. I was at a training just a couple years ago, and it was astounding to see the data and what the damage is going on.
Yeah, it
goes on down to the Gulf. Yeah. And what we're doing up here. So those prairie strips are just a godsend, aren't they?
It seems to be. They seem to really work well. They've been testing these for about a decade now, and the farmers that they use them on, they really like them. You know, you might take out a little bit of your farm ground, but to save 95% of your topsoil off your farm, I think is pretty important. And they see the value in that completely.
Oh,
so
sure.
Yeah, it's a neat thing.
So down at your facility, the morgue part is new. This stuff here is new. Yet it used to be that you just treated all of the water and all of the sewer, right? Mm-hmm. But now you're cleaning it so it's actually even drinkable, isn't it?
Well, I don't know about that.
Close.
It's close. It's closer. Yeah, a lot of people, you know, especially if you're in a drought-prone area, you go to Arizona, you go to California, you go overseas, particularly to a lot of places where, you know, we take water for granted around here. But treatment facilities all the time are talking about what they call toilet to tap. Sounds terrible, but water is water is water. It doesn't matter. I mean, it comes from we're not creating any more of it. So once you get that water cleaned up and you run it through another treatment process, yes, it can be drinkable water. What we're hoping to do with it here, since we're doing pretty well with our aquifer. But all that water that comes into the city came from an aquifer at one point. And all we're doing is we're pumping it out of the ground, sending it to everybody's homes and to all these businesses, and then we dump it in the Mississippi River. Well, what we would like to do is use it for irrigation on some farm fields. And then that water actually sinks into the ground and goes back down into the aquifer. It takes about 10, 15 years to do that. But the longer you do it, you know, the more you're replenishing the aquifer with the water that you drew out already anyway. You're helping the farmers in a drought situation. Now all of a sudden they have some irrigation water. Like right now, I guarantee you the farmers would love to have, you know, any water that we could put on there to help them with their crops and things like that. So we're working on that process as well. We've done a few studies And it looks like maybe this latest one that we're going to do should get us one step closer to having that opportunity. And the farmers were excited to hear that might be available to them. We'll hopefully be able to do something along those lines in the near future. I don't know if it'll be next year, but coming soon.
We are really fortunate to have an amazing aquifer. As compared to some of the mayor meetings I've been at, that's been some of the topics of some of the communities and how they struggle. But we are blessed.
Yes, we are, and a lot of that does come from the Mississippi. I mean, the river kind of soaks in and replenishes that, but I know that it's going down. I know that it's not replenishing as much as we're taking out. I don't think we're in trouble by any means. Nobody's said anything like that, but it just kind of stands to reason that you can't draw it down forever unless there's something else replenishing it and coming back. So we'd like to be a part of that, at least a little part of it if we can.
Well, you're definitely not anybody that rests on their laurels and just does stuff the same way we've always done it. Nobody can ever accuse you of that, John.
Well, I enjoy it. I mean, and the things that we have out there, I know bring, at least to some people or most people, some joy, like the basins and the biocells that we have that are full of flowers and things. I know I get those are just weeds a lot from some people.
All around town, yes.
I understand that, some people just, all they want is mown grass, and everything should just be mown grass and clean, or just concrete. And that's fine if that's your preference. My preference is to have living, breathing things within our communities that really bring a lot more benefit to our environment and our biodiversity and the things that really happen. We talk about sustainability a lot down here, and we're starting to talk a lot more about it within the city as a whole. I know that some of the industries have definitely sustainability in their topic of discussion at all levels. They always talk about because if you want to sustain your business, you need to talk about sustainability, right? I mean, how do we keep going? How do we keep this up down the road? What are we doing now that ensures that we're going to have the ability to do what we're doing 10 years from now, or 15 years, or 20 years, or whatever? And the city needs to do a lot more of that as well, saying, hey, what are the things that we're doing now that are actually going to keep us going and keep our communities thriving? And sustainability is a big part of that. And sustainability, it talks about people, place, and prosperity, people, planet, and prosperity. And where those things link the best, that's where you have the most sustainable projects that we can come up with. And the downtown, like across from City Hall, is the biocell that we call it the City Hall biocell. I went out there last year, and I think I counted 25 to 30 monarchs in that basin. And you look around, and it's just a concrete desert. I mean, there's nothing out there, but they found this one little strip with these milkweeds in them, and it was really neat to see butterflies right in the middle of downtown Muscatine. If it was a concrete jungle, you'd have never seen that before, and that's what it was previously. The Sycamore Alley biocell is another one that we've put in. That draws in a lot of wildlife. There's even rabbits living in there. I mean, for crying out loud, which is really cool, I think. It just kind of helps keep everything, makes you feel like you're not just in a dead zone. And then, of course, the Mulberry Basin is a huge area. If you go out kind of across from the movie theater, if and everything, it's on Baton Rouge, at the very end of Mulberry there. You look down in, and that was just supposed to be a mown basin where we just mowed it. But the bottom of it was very, very wet all the time. You couldn't mow it, so it started growing things that you couldn't take care of. So the stormwater department took that over, and we planted it with these natives, and now it's just full of flowers and creatures and birds and trees. And I mean, it's just I think it's a really neat, beautiful area, and I've had a lot of people comment about how they do appreciate that it's not just grass.
Absolutely, we do that in our yard, and it works. People that are looking to plant stuff so that they're drawing in the monarchs and the other pollinators. They don't have to think maybe something will come. They will come. Like you said, the butterflies found it down in the middle of downtown. If you plant them in your yard, they're there. You could see them.
if you plant it, they will come, as
That's
we
right.
say in Iowa, right? So yeah, what I do and what I've done is I take some big sheets of cardboard, save some of those Amazon orders you had, and keep the cardboard till next year. We have to do this now. Find a nice area where maybe you have a depression or something like that, and where you can direct some of your storm gutters or something, and put that cardboard down and cover it in mulch. And do that in like February, whenever the snow comes off the ground, and just leave it there. And what that does, it kills the grass underneath without using any chemicals or anything like that. And then you come into the Muscatine Pollinator Project and you buy your flat of flowers. And you take a bulb driller and your cordless drill, and you drill a hole right through that cardboard. So now that cardboard is going to sit there. What it's going to do, it's going to break down into compostable material, number one, which feeds the soil, but it also suppresses weeds. So you're not going to have any weeds coming up through there for a while anyway. And you just drill a hole straight through them, put your pollinator plug in there, we call it, the little starter plants. And voila, you have instant pollinator garden in an area of your yard. Now you don't have to mow that area. And now you have birds, and you have butterflies and bees, and you have all kinds of things, and beautiful, beautiful flowers to look at, and everything else like that. And it's really, really neat, I think, for everybody to try to do as much of that as they possibly can.
And the flowers are pretty. And if the impression is that they just all look like weeds, I think that's mistaken, because they are pretty flowers.
Oh yeah, they're beautiful. I mean, and they have different times where they bloom out. Now it's not the clean look that some people like, and that's fine. Yeah, it looks a little bit more wild, but it looks like a native area. It looks like something that would be naturally here, because grass isn't natural. Grass, they call it Kentucky bluegrass for a reason. It didn't grow here.
That's right. Yeah, we have like the purple cone flowers. Well, our daughter Michelle's always bringing something over, but we've got all different kinds, and they all attract. You'll just see them out there sitting on them.
And it's a manicured area. You do have to have a manicured area. You don't want to have weeds growing up in it. You want to pull anything that comes up that's a dandelion or a burdock or anything else. And you say, well, how do I know the difference? Well, there's plant apps that you can get on your phone, that you can actually hold it, take a picture of it, and a lot of these apps will tell you what this plant is.
They're really neat.
And eventually, you see it for a year or two, and then all of a sudden you kind of start noticing, oh yeah, I know what this is. This is a plant. Oh, I don't know what that thing is. It's probably a weed, and then you yank it. So
yeah, easily done. Anybody can do it.
Yeah.
Anything else, John, we need to know about what you guys are working on down there?
Well, those are the big things. Those are really the things that we have going on for the most part. Yeah, it's enough. It's a lot.
Oh yeah. So whenever anybody in Muscatine flushes their toilets, so the water comes in, you flush your toilet, you even down the shower, water that goes down through the shower, the gray water, that all goes down to you.
Yep.
And then you treat it all with chemicals, not filters.
We don't treat anything with chemicals either. No, this is it's a biological process. Yeah. The bugs that we use down here are the exact same bugs that you have in the dirt in your yard. There really isn't. There's nothing special. We don't make anything special down here. I mean, so if your dog makes a mess in the yard and you don't pick it up, what happens to it? It breaks down, right? And eventually it goes back into soil. And the reason that it does that is because the bacteria and the things that are in the soil break that mess down. And we do the exact same thing, except it takes about a week for your dog mess in your yard to go away. We can do that same thing in about 24 hours. So we just do it much more quickly, because we have a lot more bugs than you have lot more bacteria than you have in your yard. And so we do all that, on a very consistent basis.
And I was thinking of the bacteria more like chemicals, but really they're not. They're just natural.
No, we call it a biochemical reaction.
Okay, gotcha.
But we are not adding chemicals. We're not buying chemicals to add. We don't do any of that kind of stuff.
They're the digesters.
Yeah. I mean, we have chemicals we use in other areas, but it's not for
But not on
treatment,
that.
not for treatment of this kind of thing. No.
So as we use the water and flush the toilets, it all goes down to your facility and it goes through these digesters and then it goes clean back into the river.
Yeah, and I see Chad bringing some stuff up here. It has to travel through a pipe that comes out of your house, then it has to travel through the city's pipes that's under the street, and then it has to go to a station that has a pump on it.
Is that what they call the lift station?
The lift station, right? There's 22 some of these out there now, and that pump pumps that water to the treatment plant. All along the way, if you have flushed these things called flushable wipes, at any point along that way, those wipes that don't break down will clog up either your pipe or the city's pipe or the lift station or something else. And now we have a big mess on our hands. And I can't stress heavily enough that these things that even say flushable on them should not be flushed. A lot of these flushable these companies that make these are starting to realize that they're getting sued now.
I was going to say, can't somebody stop them from making those?
Well, that's what they're talking about doing. I mean, they're trying to say, look, they're getting sued now, and they're winning. These lawsuits are winning, which is what's really helping a lot. But just the other day, in my mom's neighborhood, everybody knows who I am because my mom talks about me, believe it or not.
Uh-huh.
So of course something happened with somebody's sewer. So they're like, well, call John, find out what he thinks. Well, I said, call a plumber. But what the plumber found out is they had been flushing these things called flushable wipes, and they built up in their sewer pipe, and it backed up into their basement. Raw sewage backed up into their basement because of these things labeled as flushable, but they were sitting in their pipe and not breaking down and building up on there. And so, yeah.
People don't know it. If it says it's okay, they believe that.
I completely agree. So so it's misleading, and some of them there may be some that do. Which ones do? Do you know? I mean, I don't.
No.
I have a board down here. When I give a tour of the treatment plant, I've found these in our treatment. I have a board where I've nailed all these things to this board. I'm like, does this look like it broke down to you? It didn't break down. It's still here. I mean, it made it all the way to me. That means all the way from your house through sometimes 2 lift stations, all the way to me, and it didn't break down. So how is it that you think that these are gonna, it's like you're flushing napkins, cloth napkins down your toilet. Well, you wouldn't do that, I don't think. But that's what
toilet paper doesn't make its way to you. It's disintegrated before it ever gets there.
That's exactly right. Toilet paper. We've been making this stuff for decades, and they know exactly how to make it. Breaks down in the system. Doesn't have that issue. So and people that want to use them because they like whatever about it, use toilet paper first when you're cleaning, and then use the wipe. But then throw that away. You have a trash can sitting right next to your toilet. I guarantee you, everybody in the world does. And it's you've taken that out of the equation now. If you like to use them, throw them in the trash.
Yep. Where
they belong.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Well, any final things? Any final words? Anything we need to know?
Well, we're working on getting more people to be bringing food waste down. I hope to get back into the schools. I had a lot of school kids that were really excited about doing this. The kids, gosh, they were the ones that came to me and they said, we see all this food that's getting thrown away in the trash. Can't we do something about that? And I said, absolutely, let's do something about it. And I talked to the schools. Cafeteria people were into it. I think most of the other school people were were like, absolutely, let's see what we can do. And they even got a grant to make some posters and things like that. And we're all excited. And then last year happened, and we really didn't get to move on this at all, But now we have the facility. The facility's been up and running for a year. Schools should be coming back online, right? In the fall, full time. So hopefully we can get back out there and let the kids really, really understand what's going on. Because if we can get our kids involved in this and they grow up this way, thinking this way. That's
Yes.
how we really make change. We as
Right.
adults are terrible at making changes, and we're stuck and crotchety. We're old and in our ways. We don't want to do anything different. We got to get our kids. We got to get the kids of the world to understand how this works and what it is, so that we can really make some definite changes in how we handle our wastes.
Great words of advice. Thank you, John.
Anytime, and please let me know if you want a tour, if you have a group. I've had kids all the way from Cub Scouts to Girl Scouts to classes and everything else like that. We love to give tours. Now that everybody's back to doing things like that, we can start doing that again as well. And kids always love to have a tour down here. It's a really interesting place for them.
It really is interesting. It's not boring at all. I've done it. It's very exciting. So people can call you at your facility, or they can find your email on the city website and just send you an email either way.
They sure can.
All right.
Email or just give a call if you have a church group, however you want to do it, and you think, boy, this might be something interesting that we want to see how this works in our community. Just let me know.
I love it. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Great information, and feel free to share it with anybody that you know. Next week, our guest is John DeBeat. He's the Sister City Muscatine president, and he'll be talking to us about Muscatine sister cities. Tonight, we do have an in-depth Muscatine City Council meeting starting at 7 o'clock. We ask you to join us virtually, and you can find the log on the City of Muscatine website on tonight's agenda. We are going to be hearing a presentation from John on MORC. We're also going to be hearing a presentation on the leaf pickup program in Muscatine and the fireworks. Let's see, what else? I think we have a fireworks. Yes, if you are interested in fireworks, there's a lot of people that have contacted us both ways about fireworks, in support of them, not, when can we do them, when can we not? About questions about their sale. That's all going to be talked about tonight. I think Mike Hartman's going to come, but feel free to log on. There'll be an opportunity for you to share or ask questions if you like. Big thanks to our guest, John Koch, again today. We look forward to seeing you all here next week on Our City, and thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day.